What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover, and she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house and went to my mom's for just a little while. Tried to call her when I left. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there, so I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul was gonna be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died, and he was refiguring to plant the sunflower seeds. So I came back up here and I drove up and saw and called.
Not an ID.
Yeah,
I don't know. I thought I read that was his friend.
Hang on a second. Up to this point, right now we're talking about how we thought the guy in the back seat was a police officer, but it was just odd. And Greg, what did you say about that?
I think it's his friend. I think it's his friend. I don't remember, but I think it's his friend.
He's got his shirt open like he's Robert Wagner. Only thing he's missing is those little scarves that go there, or an what do you call that thing? An ascot? Was that what's the scarf they put on Mark?
Cravat.
Oh,
they call it a cravat.
That's all he's missing. Plus, they need to get him some kind of COVID, something on him. This guy, man, he's back there. Sounds like something's up with him. Sounds like it's maybe some of his last days. Oof. Okay. Sorry about that. I should cut all that out.
Maybe it's code for shut up, you sound stupid.
It could be. And so I'm going to say this about him too. In a little while, his knee comes out. Look how shiny his knee is. It's almost like a mirror. It looks like it's so weird, man. It looks like a polished piece of wood when it comes out. His knee. You'll see it in a few minutes. Okay, I thought he was a cop. I wasn't going to say anything about it, but man, I hope he's not. But geez, he's really got to get his thing together, man. All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, this is the first time we see him touch his face, touches his nose. Look, you'll hear people say if a person touches their nose, they're lying. No, we're not those folks. What we're saying is look for a deviation in baseline and ask yourself why. It's a pertinent question and a hard question. Why did you come out here tonight? Well, that's a good question. And he uses his left hand, touches his face. Suddenly, he does one of the most powerful male adapters that exist. I call it butterfly thighs. And if you ever want to see, men will flip their legs, their thighs in and out that way. Younger men do it a lot. It also includes your genitals when you start moving your legs, and it has a lot of impact. So that's a big comforting move for a guy to do. You'll see it a lot in younger sports players when they're being interviewed, when you watch them on night shows and that kind of thing. All an adapter is a way for you to release nervous energy. And if we do them enough, they become habitual. So if you don't know what yours are, the way you release nervous energy, ask someone next to you. Ask someone who knows you well, because they know what you do when you're releasing nervous energy. Maybe you pick your nails, flip your hair, do something like that. Then he starts to tell a long story that has no pertinence to anything we're talking about. And that is, I went to see my mama. My mama's sick. She's got dementia. And he goes on and 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 on. And he gives you the cookbook. We call that chaff and redirect because an aircraft drops chaff to hope a missile will follow it rather than the story. That's what he's doing. He's dropping lots of details, hoping you'll follow that. And that's odd usually. But again, my wife and son are lying 100 yards away, dead. Somebody murdered them. And I'm going to tell you about my mom's Jell-O she had for lunch. Come on. And he's adapting like all hell with that issue, with his hands and with the other. He goes to that dog lover. She fools with a dog. Boom. One shoulder rises. We hadn't seen that yet. We see a single shoulder. We often associate that with discomfort or not comfortable in the information they're sharing. He does a pause. He does a down left, looks down left, which we associate with internal voice. And he does a head scratch. We associate all of those things with thinking, with giving yourself time to think. He doesn't say what he saw over with her, either with words or with body language or with tone. None of that. And I think the female law enforcement officer in the back senses it, because watch her cross her abdomen in discomfort as he's telling that story. I bet if you went and talked to them and say, this guy, day one, we thought he whacked her. We thought he killed his wife. That's exactly what I think you'd see. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, there's a cascade of negative statements, victim statements, really. The parents are ill and anxious. Maggie's a dog lover, doesn't love him, loves the dogs. She falls with the dogs. That's negative. Rather than going, she looks after those dogs so well. She's falling with the dogs. And he's texted her and there's no response. So she's not attentive to him. And then Paul is associated with sunflowers dying. So again, not being able to, I mean, more of this story will come out, and maybe he's laying down this story early, but essentially everybody is inept. Ultimately, parents are non-functioning. Wife loves animals and messes around and doesn't answer the phone, and Paul can't look after sunflowers. So really casting a bad light on the victims there, and him being around people who can't look after themselves or the things that are important, or him. This is very different from a video that we looked at earlier this week around the boyfriend of Nicola Bulley, who went missing, maybe is still missing, who knows at this point. But in that particular film, he didn't create any negative attitude about this missing person, no negative attitude about the victim. No, she goes for silly walks with the dog and probably messed up somewhere. And so it's so different here. Again, that alone is a loud flag. You can't have a loud flag, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's a loud flag. It's a loud flag. Greg, what do you got on this one? No? Chase?
Yep, I'll go.
Thank you.
This is detail overload. There's a few things I want you to notice as you go through the video again in just a second. Number one, the detail and just the chronology of everything is loaded and piled high. But none of the details are about finding out who did this. There is no request to investigate the scene or talk about the word murder. It's the last word in the world that he wants to come out of his mouth at a moment like this. And the confirmation glances back and forth where he's checking that detective with every detail, in this clip especially, just to make sure he's buying it, are just a classic hallmark of deception. It's one of the things we look for when we see a lot of other behaviors and they're outside of baseline, like we're seeing here. And when he says, obviously, nobody was in there, I think he's telling us, potentially, this is my opinion, as this entire video is just an opinion, I think he's telling us it was obvious to him that nobody was going to be in that house. Then finally, we have something called severity softening and lack of detail. There's tons of minute, perfect little details about the intricate process he's going through with these sunflower seeds. Then, what's the detail on the crime scene? Here's the detail on the crime scene in this video, word for word. I came up and saw and called. That's the difference between sunflower seeds versus dead family members here. Scott?
You know what, Greg, when you now that you've told us this guy in the back isn't a cop, this makes so much sense the way she's acting. And do you know what's making it? This is what I think. Here I go off on my rants. But you know what makes me think she knows something's up? Think about it for a minute. You guys think about this for a second. What's he wearing? A white T-shirt. Where's he come from? He's come from two people who have been killed it's a bloody crime scene that he's put his hands on, that he's been messing with. There's no blood on this guy. Nowhere. Right. And he's not using that Kleenex. He's not looking at his hands to make sure there's no blood. He's washed his hands. That's what's happened. He's changed clothes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he'll tell you he went back to the house afterward. Yep.
That's what's happened. I don't know if he doesn't talk about it in here anyway. That's what's bothering her. No. That's what I bet that, because she can't see him. So it's something that happened beforehand that's got her thinking something's up with this guy. That's what I think is happening there. I just thought about that a second ago. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I think is going on there. But back to the body language part of it. After the question, you're right, Greg. He touches the middle part of his head there, the middle of his brow there. Haven't seen that yet, if there's other than rubbing his whole face. And then he does this really quick request for approval. That's another one of Greg's things where your eyebrows go up as you're looking to get something okayed, or you're asking a question, you need some information. His eyebrows go up, and he starts adapting. I guess what you call that butterfly thing, Greg. And then he starts using his Kleenex as an adapter, which we talked about would happen earlier. We talked about that was going to happen. A whole lot of movement in comparison to the baseline we've seen up to this point, because he's been fairly still up till now. This is where it makes me think something would be up with this. Then he starts going down this list of stuff, and his voice is, and then this, and it's just a list. He's rehearsed this. He knew what he was going to say when he came into this. When this question came up, he's got his list of things that happened and things that he was going to talk about. We see a couple of those little shoulder shrugs, a single shoulder shrug here and a single one there, and then a full one there. But the thing is with shoulder shrugs, and you'll hear a lot of things about them, but here's what we are under the impression or understand that shoulder shrugs indicate, is when one shoulder goes up really quickly, that says, I'm not sure about this answer. I'm not sure what I'm saying. If it goes up and stays, like it will sometimes, it stays for about a second or second half. Same with a double shoulder shrug. It stays up for a second. If not, it just comes up and then down really quickly. That indicates the person isn't sure about their answer. Not that they're being deceptive, but it just says they're not sure about what that answer is. And I think he's afraid. He's trying to make sure he's covering every basis. He's thinking about that. I guess in his brain, maybe he's thinking, okay, I've got that covered. Let me see what else. Yeah, I got that. I think as he goes down this list, that's why we're seeing those things. But throughout this, he still hasn't used that Kleenex for what you use them for. And I think he changed clothes. I think he washed up and changed clothes. That's what I think on that one. Let's see what happens. All right, we good?
Mm-hmm.
The eyewitness is you.
What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover, and
Okay.
she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house and went to my mom's for just a little while. Tried to call her when I left. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there. So I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul was gonna be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died, and he was refiguring to plant the sunflower seeds.
Okay.
So I came back up here and I drove up and saw and called.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.